Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of complex sources, court documents, FBI files, financial reports, all of it, and we try to boil it all down to the narrative you really need.
Today, we are immersing ourselves in one of the most persistent and complicated accountability timelines in recent history.
We're talking about the public unmasking and the slow, painstaking unraveling of the Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell network.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't just about one sensational trial. I mean, the story spans nearly 2 decades of institutional failures, these controversial backroom deals, and just relentless public pressure.
Pressure that eventually forced governments and, even major corporations to finally act.
Exactly. So our mission today is laser focused. We are tracking the chain of accountability, starting with that deeply flawed plea deal back in 2008 and taking it all the way up to the political battles over transparency that are happening right now in December 2025.
And what's really fascinating here is that the sources let us frame this whole thing as a study in escalation. It started as a failure of justice for the victims.
Right?
Then, it kind of morphed into a political crisis for U.S. officials, and finally it became this precedent-setting legal challenge against huge financial enablers.
And now the focus has shifted because with Epstein gone, it's not about prosecuting the man anymore.
No, it's all about achieving systemic transparency. It's about the network he operated.
So let's start at the very beginning, the foundation of the failure that let this all happen. We have to go back to the long shadow of impunity cast by that 2008 non-prosecution agreement.
That NPA, the non-prosecution agreement from 2008, that's where the trouble truly began. It was a secret deal. And almost immediately after it was done, a victim filed a formal petition.
And what was the allegation?
They alleged the government had violated the Crime Victims' Rights Act, the CVRA, by resolving the entire federal investigation without consulting a single one of the known victims.
That's such a critical point. The sources really show the structural flaw, right? The government's argument was, well, since no formal federal charges had been filed yet.
The CVRA didn't technically apply.
It's an incredible loophole. It allowed them to just bypass all the required consultations and keep the whole deal sealed from the victims and the public.
Exactly. And what that NPA got Epstein was, well, it was shockingly minimal time and maximum accommodation. It just cemented this perception of institutional protection.
The terms were 18 months of state incarceration.
But due to Florida's very generous gain time rules for good behavior, he served less than 13 months total.
And the nature of that incarceration is maybe the most audacious detail in the sources.
It was extraordinary. The NPA let him spend up to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, on a work release program.
Not serving the public.
No, he was supposedly working at something called the Florida Science Foundation.
And where was this foundation located?
It was co-located in the West Palm Beach office of one of his own personal defense attorneys.
So the sources paint a picture that sounds less like a prison sentence.
And more like a timeout with office hours.
I mean, reports from that time said his cell door was sometimes left unlocked. Deputies let him travel unsupervised for hours at a time. It's just stunning.
And it took a full decade for that system of impunity to finally shatter.
So what was the catalyst? What finally broke it open?
It was a piece of investigative journalism. In November 2018, the Miami Herald published this devastating report.
Months-long investigation.
Right, and it detailed the full, extraordinary nature of that NPA. And crucially, they named the official who orchestrated it, the U.S. attorney at the time, Alex Acosta.
And by 2018, Acosta wasn't just some regional prosecutor anymore. He was President Trump's labor secretary.
Mm-hmm. That report fueled massive public outrage. Congress started looking into his past conduct. The consequences were swift.
They were. July 2019, Epstein is arrested on new federal sex trafficking charges. He lands in New Jersey from Paris, and they're waiting for him.
And just days later, the very next week, Acosta is forced to resign as labor secretary.
A direct line. A decade-old failure leading directly to current political accountability.
Yes. But the arrest that closed the chapter on Acosta immediately opened a new, and frankly, a very disturbing one.
The failure of federal custody itself. Let's talk about that. August 2019.
Okay, so after his arrest on July 6th, Epstein was denied bail. The judge said his proclivity for young girls appeared, quote, uncontrollable. He was sent to the Metropolitan Correctional Center, the MCC, in Manhattan.
And just over a month later, August 10th, 2019, he's found dead in his cell.
And the circumstances were immediate fuel for public skepticism. I mean, the institutional failures leading up to it were catastrophic.
That's the key takeaway from the FBI and DOJ investigations that followed, isn't it?
Absolutely. The sources reveal these severe deficiencies. The 2 guards assigned to his unit reportedly fell asleep. They didn't check on him for hours.
A direct violation of protocol. They were supposed to do checks every 30 minutes.
And worse, they later falsified prison records to cover it up. Then you have the reports of 2 broken cameras outside his cell.
I remember the Attorney General at the time, William Barr, said he was appalled. He called it a perfect storm of screw-ups.
He did, and he ordered immediate investigations.
But that level of failure just raises so many questions, and those questions only got louder when the autopsy results came out.
The official autopsy, done by the chief medical examiner, ruled the death a suicide by hanging. But the findings themselves were controversial.
What did they find?
The autopsy found multiple broken neck bones, including the hyoid bone, which is a U-shaped bone up near the jaw, and the thyroid cartilage.
And this led to a very public medical dispute.
A huge one. A pathologist hired by Epstein's family, Michael Baden, challenged the ruling. He asserted that those injuries, especially the broken hyoid,
Were far more consistent with homicidal strangulation.
that's what he claimed. He said he'd reviewed over 1,000 jail hangings in his career, and, quote, no one had 3 fractures of that type.
So we have to be nuanced here, right? Because while that claim got a ton of public traction, especially given the negligence at the jail.
Right. Other medical experts did weigh in. They noted that the hyoid bone can break during a hanging, especially in older people where the bone is less flexible. They said multiple fractures, while rare, aren't definitive proof of homicide.
But the conflicting opinions, it just became another reason for the public to distrust the official story.
Exactly. And regardless of the cause of death, his death closed the criminal case against him. The indictment was dismissed on August 29, 2019.
But the pressure for accountability didn't just go away.
Not at all. I mean, if they couldn't prosecute the man, the focus had to shift to the system he left behind.
And that's the critical pivot point, isn't it? With Epstein gone, the pursuit of justice shifts to 2 other areas.
Proxy justice against co-conspirators and financial accountability for the powerful institutions that enabled him.
Which brings us to the next phase, 2020 through 2023. And the first, most immediate target was Ghislaine Maxwell.
Maxwell, Epstein's longtime associate. She was arrested in July 2020, charged with recruiting, grooming, and abusing minors, and participating in the whole conspiracy.
And her prosecution, really, it was about providing the victims some measure of the justice they were denied by his suicide.
The legal system had to validate that the criminal enterprise was real. Maxwell was the key to that.
And the timeline shows the system worked in her case.
It did. She was convicted in December 2021, sentenced to 20 years in June 2022. Her conviction was upheld on appeal in September 2024, and the Supreme Court rejected her final appeal just last month, October 2025.
So the co-conspirator was held accountable. But the sources showed that accountability went even further. It started targeting the financial infrastructure of the whole enterprise.
And that's where the financial toll becomes truly stunning, specifically with J.P. Morgan Chase.
They were his primary banker for 15 years.
15 years, from 1998 all the way to 2013 when they finally cut ties. Lawsuits later alleged they just failed to detect and prevent human trafficking activity funded right through his accounts.
Despite numerous red flags.
So many red flags. And this is more than just negligence, isn't it? The sources suggest the legal process set a new precedent.
That banks have an active responsibility to monitor for human trafficking, not just for money laundering.
Precisely. And that legal pressure forced them to pay a historic price. In June 2022, J.P. Morgan agreed to pay $290 million to settle claims from dozens of accusers.
And that wasn't even the end of it.
No. Then they settled a separate, really high-profile lawsuit with the U.S. Virgin Islands in September 2023 for another $75 million.
And the terms of that settlement were notable. They specifically earmarked $25 million of it to go toward fighting human trafficking in the territory.
Right. And while the bank never admitted legal liability, they did issue a statement expressing profound regret for, quote, any association with this man.
So the takeaway here is that the institutional failure, the banking system's willing blindness, came with a price tag.
A big one, over $365 million. And it set a powerful precedent for future liability against financial enablers.
Okay, so that brings us to the final ongoing phase of this whole narrative, the one that has completely defined 2024 and 2025, the battle for transparency.
Right. Criminal justice for Epstein himself was impossible. Co-conspirators and banks paid penalties. so the public focus shifted entirely to the documents.
The so-called Epstein files.
This focus was just heavily fueled by public speculation, by conspiracy theories about some mythical, suppressed client list that was used for blackmail.
The first real document releases happened in January 2024. They came from a 2015 defamation case against Maxwell.
A New York judge ordered the unsealing of hundreds of documents, and it immediately ignited a media frenzy.
Because they mentioned so many prominent names. Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Michael Jackson, Stephen Hawking. I mean, the list went on.
And it is so critical for you, the listener, to understand the context of these mentions. Most of these famous names were mentioned in passing.
In depositions about flight logs or in contact lists from his famous Black Book.
Exactly. Reporters who had the material quickly clarified that just being mentioned wasn't an accusation of wrongdoing. I mean, the Black Book had everyone from celebrities to his hairdresser in it.
But that nuance was completely lost in the political showdown that erupted in mid-2025.
That summer, the pressure just mounted drastically. Former senior White House advisor Elon Musk tweeted, and then later deleted, a specific allegation that President Trump was named in unreleased files.
And that just escalated the whole battle to a new level of political warfare.
It did. The Department of Justice felt like it had to respond.
Yeah.
So on July 7th, 2025, the DOJ releases a memo.
And they state, unequivocally, that the supposed client list used for blackmail did not exist.
And that no credible evidence was found that Epstein successfully blackmailed anyone prominent.
And the reaction to that official denial was?
Immediate and widespread skepticism.
Yeah. And the sources paint this picture of extraordinary efforts happening behind the scenes, especially from people pushing for the full release.
They do. Attorney General Pam Bondi was reportedly engaged in these intense efforts, pressuring the FBI to put about 1,000 personnel on 24-hour shifts to review over 100,000 sensitive records.
And the internal sources detail a specific instruction. Personnel were allegedly told to flag any mentions of President Trump.
This kind of intense internal scrutiny, it was bound to lead to some really serious allegations of political tampering.
Which we have to report impartially. So in September 2025, a stunning development. A DOJ official is secretly recorded.
And the recording alleges that the DOJ planned to, quote, redact every Republican or conservative person in those files, leave all the liberal Democratic people in those files.
And Epstein's own brother, Mark Epstein, added fuel to that fire.
He made similar public claims. Alleged a team in Virginia was sanitizing the files to systematically remove Republican names while leaving Democratic ones.
The gravity of those accusations, I mean, the Justice Department was politically weaponizing this. It spurred immediate legislative action.
Which brings us right up to the present day. Congress reacted with astonishing speed and, rare bipartisan unity.
On November 18th, 2025, the House passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act. The vote was 427 to 1.
And the Senate approved it unanimously the very same day. The law requires the DOJ to release the totality of the files within 30 days.
So the transparency mandate is now legally binding. We're watching the countdown.
We are. We've seen some limited recent releases, some photos and videos from Little St. James surfaced on December 3rd. But the full, sensitive files mandated by Congress, they have yet to drop.
And meanwhile, the last key criminal figure in all of this, Ghislaine Maxwell, she remains a total wild card.
She does. It's a complex legal situation. You might recall she was controversially transferred to a minimum security prison back in August.
An action questioned internally as being against Bureau of Prisons policy for a convicted sex offender.
Right. And she initially offered to testify to Congress if she got immunity. But now, her legal team has confirmed she will plead the Fifth Amendment in the upcoming House probe.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of this incredibly complex timeline. Let's unpack this. What does this all mean for the overall accountability narrative?
What really stands out is that accountability for this whole enterprise has been completely decoupled from the life of the main defendant. The system that once gave him impunity through secret deals, through lax custody, has been slowly demolished by public and political pressure.
So accountability shifted from the dead man to his co-conspirator,
to the negligence of major financial partners, and now finally to the transparency of the government itself.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the sources seem to demonstrate that the pursuit of the documents, the Epstein files, has become the central way of achieving some measure of public justice.
It's a kind of proxy accountability. It forces institutions, whether it's a huge bank or the Department of Justice, to answer for their past actions and their past silence.
And that dynamic leads us to a really fascinating tension as we wrap up here.
Hmm. You have Ghislaine Maxwell, the convicted key co-conspirator, in a questionable prison placement. She initially offers to trade testimony for immunity, and now she's refusing to speak, protected by the Fifth Amendment.
So this raises an important question for you to think about. In a world that's so intensely focused on absolute transparency, what is the value of information that's held hostage by secrecy? Whether that secrecy is institutional, from government redactions, or constitutional, protected by the Fifth Amendment.
And what is the final price the public must pay to fully see the picture of the network that operated with total impunity for so long?